Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sony Pole Day Qualifying. As we get set and ready to set the field for you for the Daytona 500, everyone's going to be shooting for that front row and going to try and be the fastest five of the Go or Go Homers. A record-breaking entry list for this Speed Week's 79 entries for the Daytona 500. A lot of cars will be sent home. Jordan Presto in the 87 for Anj Auto is going to be the first car on the racetrack. Now we're going to be monitoring the times like we did last year and every other year. 204 into turn 1. So the speed going into the corners is going to be really what we measure off of how quick everyone's going. But so excited to be back for Daytona. Ryan Acosta won last night in the Sony shootout. And Presto will be trying to do a job that'll be very hard to do for this Speed Weeks. And that is make the great American race. And this will be the 25th Annual Daytona 500. Jordan Presto across the line, a 44.125. And that is an improvement over the time that he ran in practice. So he's about 2/10 up than what he did in practice on Saturday. 5.68, which about 2/10 off from what majority of everyone else is running. He's a little off the pace compared to the rest of the Go or Go Homers. It will be a very, very hard task for anybody to be in the fastest five. There are just so many Go or Go Homers for Speed Weeks that racing your way in the duels is going to be big. 43.456, so that is an improvement over his time in practice. So it seems like everyone's picking up some pace, and Patrick Smith is on top of the leaderboards after 2 race cars. Hey, Kurtis, the 2017 and Season 13 champion of the series, is in the back. He's back in that 19 car. DJ Kurtis, Cybertron Motorsports. Kurtis, he may be a huge threat to win the pole today. He's driving basically what was the old Yamp Motorsports equipment. He's up to 210, 211 into turn 1. So DJ Kurtis could be a threat. His teammate goes late. His teammates go late, may I add. Cole Baker in the 79 ran really good in the Sony shootout, also attempting to make the Daytona 500. DJ Kurtis, never a winner in the big race. 213 into turn 3. We know that 19 car, the CBMs, they have some very good race cars. They inherited very good super speedway equipment. The old Yamp Motorsports team, they were good here for Pole Day last year. And DJ Kurtis runs a 42.643. That is better than what the practice sheet was when Eric Burton topped the time sheet in practice, and speeds are picking up. DJ Kurtis, who was the 3rd car to go out, may well be the target everyone is aiming for all day today. DJ Kurtis laid down a great lap tonight. We're out on the racetrack. It's our favorite Canadian, Kyle Collins. He'll be our 4th qualifier. And as you see, the guys that are going to have to qualify in are going to have their names highlighted on the timesheet whenever we go to it. The drivers in green, there will be 5 drivers highlighted in green. Those drivers are the ones that are in the race off of speed. The ones in white, obviously, they're locked in the race. 209 into turn 1, that is not the speed that DJ Kurtis was carrying. So Collins is not on a pole run. It doesn't look like. You got to have that speed right into turn 1 and carry it all the way around the racetrack. Collins is locked into the Daytona 500, so is DJ Kurtis. Patrick Smith, Jordan Presto, going to have their hands full all week as they try to make this Daytona 500. There's going to be a lot of Go or Go Homers that are time trialing in. Only 30 are locked in. 5 will get locked in after today. 42.946, that is a big time improvement. So that is about 2/10. So basically what everyone's doing right now, everyone's picking up about 2/10. So Collins, 42.946, second fastest. AJ Jones driving for the 39 car in this Speed Weeks for Young Motorsports. A.J. Jones, like a lot of people, will be attempting to make the first ever Daytona 500 for him. 200 miles an hour across the start-finish line. A.J. Jones is going to have a lot of work to do, as he's got about the same pace as Jordan Presto. A lot of drivers, just like A.J. Jones, are going to be relying on the Gatorade duels, because with as many cars that are trying to make this race, and some of these teams just not having the equipment that you really will need to make a flyer to make this Daytona 500 on speed, racing your way in will be the big deal. As A.J. Jones comes across the start-finish line, see where he'll line up. The higher up you'll start for the Gatorade duel, the better. 44.019. So A.J. Jones and that race team are going to have their hands full for Thursday. Challenger for the pole position, you got to be considering the 2019 Daytona 500 champion, Chris Dodd. As Dodd comes to the start-finish line, he had such a good car in the Sony shootout. Looking to get back to victory lane again, 206. If he can pick up about 2/10 like he was doing, like everyone's doing, he could take the pole. 211. Right into turn one. This could be a pole run. And this year for Chris Dodd is crucial. He has really not been like his teammates in the past, like Ryan Griffin and Ryan Acosta, winning races. Dodd won the Daytona 500 in 2019. That's all he's won so far in his career. Looking to get back to victory lane. He's proven himself that he's a good super speedway racer. And Chris Dodd off of turn 4, looking to have a breakout year in the Sony Cup Series. Across the line, 42.507. And to the top of the charts, Chris Dodd on provisional pole right now as he passes DJ Kurtis. Dodd goes to the top of the charts. We have over 70 cars still left to go, and it is anybody's chance to grab the pole for the 25th Annual Daytona 500, so don't tune away. Happy to have you all watching. Shade Eaves for Tommy Roberts Racing. He laid down a pretty good lap in practice. This team usually has not been too competitive in the duels in trying to make the Daytona 500, but this year they feel pretty confident that the Tommy Roberts Racing car can make the race. And that's pretty impressive, all things considering, because this team did not make a race at all in 2020. So Eaves trying to be one of the Cinderella stories for Speed Weeks. Practice really well. If he can back it up, maybe pick up a couple of tenths like a few other drivers have done so far, Shade Eaves could be right in the mix of things. As he comes across the line, we'll see where that puts him. 43.30.09. So that'll put him right there, 4th fastest. So he is currently the best of the GOGH homers. The driver that a lot of people have circled as a contender for the fastest 5. Scott Roush, driving the 0 CM Racing car. This is the old 31 car from last year in the 2020 season, when Dejon Weeks drove it a handful of times. Roush hoping to time trial his way in and not having to race his way in. 210 in a turn 1. He's a contender to be right up there. Definitely looking like he's going to be the fastest of the cars that have ran so far. Shade Eaves ran a 43.309, and then Patrick Smith picked up a good bit from practice. Smith could be a contender in the duels with his speed, but A.J. Jones and Jordan Presto, they're about 7 to 8 tenths off of Shade Eaves, and they're over a second off of, or a second and a half really, off Chris Dodd, so they have a lot to make up before Thursday. Scott Roush, meanwhile, runs a 42.766. So that is a very, very good time. He's faster than Kyle Collins, 3rd fastest. That should get Scott Roush in the field. I think that is a comfortable time. He picked up a lot. It was the time where we're going to start bumping people. So we already have 5 GOGH homers that have taken time. Scott Roush, Shade Eaves, Patrick Smith, A.J. Jones, Jordan Presto. Maalik Nevins getting ready to take time, and he looks very miserable out there. He didn't even hit 200 mile an hour across the line, and he looks like he is going to be the slowest of the cars that have hit the track. This is a startup team. A lot of teams here are making their debut, and this is one of them. The 35 and the 95, Gatlin Downey Incorporated. Gatlin Downey, he's a owner driver. Downey didn't even make a race in the Sony Cup Series last year. Attempted a handful of them, but never made a race. Downey, as a team owner, starting up here at Daytona, and it's looking very tough for him as a team owner, and for Nevins. He's been in the series a while, but this is the slowest time out there. And Nevins is not going to make the race on speed. He's going to have to find something on Thursday in the Gatorade Duels. 2015 Daytona 500 champion is on the racetrack and has to time trial his way in or either race in. That is Jeff James. James had the luxury of being locked in last year. This year it's a little different. Driving for Martin Motorsports, a Ford. Now, Martin Motorsports was really good in years past, but this is a different race team. But he's looking very quick. He's 211 at a turn 1. So Jeff James might actually be a contender for the pole. Very shocking to say, but Martin Motorsports not playing around. 213 in a turn 3. Now, Jeff James, he was in the Sony shootout last night. He was competitive mid-pack there. Didn't really get up there to the leaders. But Jeff James crossed the line. 42.60. 42.60. That is second best for Jeff James. Jeff James jumps all the way up to second best. He's even past Scott Roush. So Jeff James, fastest of the GOGH homers, he could be one of the fastest 5. That should be one of the fastest 5. Looking at the speed, but who am I to say? There's a lot more to come. Rogers is now on the racetrack. That's a great lap by Jeff James and Martin Motorsports. Got to give them a big round of applause for being this quick for Speed Weeks. Got Jeff James dialed in. He should be able to make the race off of that. Now, Jake Rogers, he practiced well for that 70 car. On Auto really pushing hard to try and get these 4 machines into the field. 208 into turn 1, which is a respectable speed by himself. Jake Rogers hoping to make the 25th Annual Daytona 500. He should be able to beat A.J. Jones this time for sure to be provisionally in the top 5 of the fastest 5, but what would really set him up nice if he can beat Shade Eaves, and obviously, I mean, Scott Roush and Jeff James, but he's definitely not on Jeff James's pace and not on Scott Roush's. But if he can beat Shade Eaves, as many people as you can beat, that's just even better. And he does. 43.237 for Jake Rogers. So he does beat Shade Eaves, so that puts him in a relatively decent position. Season 12 champion of the series, Ian Dutta's on the racetrack for Hydra Racing. And Dutta, let's see where he actually was in practice. Dutta's hoping to make the big dance, but let's see here. Yep, he was about the same pace as what Jake Rogers was in practice. Dutta getting up to about 208, about the same thing as what Jake Rogers was doing. So Dutta for Hydra. Hydra's hoping to have a car that can race their way in for the Daytona 500. Hydra Racing made their full-time debut last year, and they made select races. This year, they're hoping to make a lot more races with the defending with the Season 12 champion. But Dutta crossed the line. 208 at the line, and that is just so close, but I don't believe that is better than what Jake Rogers did. No, He is only 3/1000ths of a second off of what Jake Rogers did, so that puts him 4th best of the Go or Go Homers. More Go or Go Homer, and then we will focus on a couple of the locked-in drivers that will probably be gunning more so for the pole. But Dewey Schramm III, looking about the same speed as what Maalik Nevins was running. This is the same car as Nevins, the Gatlin Downey Incorporated car, the Slam Jam machine. And his chances are slim to none of making this top 5 right now. So, just like we mentioned with Nevins, just racing your way in on Thursday is going to be the big deal. And Schramm III, he's never made a Sony Cup Series appearance, and this is his first time. And, well, he attempted a couple races with Joseph Wrigley Racing at the end of last year, but never has started a Sony Cup Series race. Across the line, he is faster than Nevins, though, so that is something, but that puts him 12th best. So, not one of the fastest 5. He'll have to race his way in on Thursday. Rodriguez is out on the racetrack, Season 14 Daytona 500 champion, and 3rd place in the final standings last year. Rodriguez coming in this year wanting to win more races, wanting to compete for the championship again. And across the line, he's going to try and go after the Sony pole here at Daytona. If he can get up to 211 in turn 1, we can see that he's got the pace, but it just flickered just a little in a turn 1. It wasn't like it was Chris Dodd. He may be up there with Jeff James and DJ Kurtis, but Matthew Rodriguez needing to carry the speed down the back straightaway. And it doesn't look like he's got much straightaway speed, does it? Not down the back straightaway, it didn't. Jeff James had 213 in a turn 3, so we know this is not going to be on the front row. Matthew Rodriguez across the start-finish line. Where is he going to end up? 42.649, which places him 4th, just behind DJ Kurtis. So, just missing out on that, but he's got a good race car, it seems. Llamas is going to give it his chance now to try and take the pole. Llamas usually always snagging up pole positions, at least one of them every season, but Llamas, can he get it done here at Daytona? Kurtis Racing didn't seem like they had the best car in single car runs. Cody and Nick Mason, that iconic 48 car, those are the 2 drivers I think of immediately when I think of the number 48. Cody Llamas grew up racing with that 48, now finally has it for a full-time season. Now, Llamas, he looks like he's got a decent enough car. He should be at least on the outside front row. He's got a good car so far. He's hitting all the right marks for as far as speed into the corners. And Llamas, he looked good in the Sony shootout. Could he be a contender for the Daytona 500? And just not quite to get the pole from Chris Dodd, but he'll bump Jeff James off the front row. Cody Llamas puts himself up to 2nd so far. Another driver out on the racetrack, Zaedin Davidson. Moving over to Monster Energy Racing, this team expanding up to 3 cars. Davidson in the 47. Now, Zaedin Davidson needs to run at least a 43.309 to bump Shade Eaves out. Jeff James, however, ran a blistering lap, 42.602, but Davidson didn't seem like he was really up to pace in a turn 1. Now, this team didn't really have the highest expectations as far as making the fastest 5 with the amount of GOGH homers that are trying to make this race. But Zaedin Davidson and team are hoping that he'll race his way in on Thursday. Now, he could time trial his way in, but we'll see where he ends up. 42.873. That's a lot better than what I predicted he would do. He beats Jake Rogers, and he is 3rd of the GOGH homers at this current moment. Days now hitting the racetrack in the Texan Motorsports Ford. That is a beautiful ride, might I add. Texan Motorsports made the race last year. Can they make it this year? As they come across the line, they're in a Ford. They're Ford for this year. Last year it was a Chevy. This year it is a Ford manufacturer. Day up to 209 into turn 1. Daniel Day will need to hit at least a 43.124 or 43.24 at least to be able to bump Ian Dutta out of the top 5 and put Day in it. Texan Motorsports looking to put in the number of races, 10 races, I believe, for this year as they run in the Napa and the Hardy Series. Day comes across the line, 43.060, and that is a good lap. It puts him 4th best of the GOGH homers and just behind Zaedin Davidson. So right now it is Jeff James, Scott Roush, Zaedin Davidson, Daniel Day, and Jake Rogers. Baker now on the racetrack, and this is going to be a tough cookie to beat in time trials. Baker, just like DJ Kurtis, has some ponies under the hood, and I expect this guy to time trial his way in today. That car has no reason not to make this race off of speed, but 211, he just barely nicked 211. Jeff James might actually be faster than Cole Baker, which would say a lot from the Martin Motorsports team if they can be faster than Cybertron Motorsports. Last year, Martin Motorsports came to this racetrack with Dodge engines, then swapped over to Ford mid-season. And now they have one of their drivers sitting 3rd out of 17 cars right now. But Baker, Cole Baker, on pole in the July race last year, got himself in the Sony shootout because of it. 42.653, which puts him in 6th place. 2nd of the GOGH homers. So Cole Baker, that lap time, I believe it'll be good enough. I think it will be. You know, he's only 0.05 of a second off of Jeff James. I think that's going to be the time. I think James, I think Baker, I think those two are pretty much locked. But Scott Roush, Zaedin Davidson, not entirely sure. But Jake Rogers, that means he'll have to race his way in on Thursday. The racetrack now is one of the Cloud 9s. Cloud 9 becoming basically the Red Bull Junior team. Getting the old Red Bull parts and old race cars. Cloud 9 should be more of a contender this year. Doug Lockrow, 209 into turn 1. Going to be a contender for the top 5, possibly move Daniel Day out. Lockrow was 1 corner away from winning the Daytona 500 in 2019. I think a lot of people might forget about that. Chris Dodd made the winning pass into turn 3 to pass Doug Lockrow, who was driving for Horizon Group in a one-off race in the Daytona 500. Lockrow to the line, 42.977. So that's going to be good enough to put him 5th of all the GOGH homers. So currently he's provisionally in the Daytona 500 on speed, but there are a lot more drivers to come. Lockrow he's got himself up high in the order so far, but I don't think that's going to hold. John Weeks in the 3 car. Moving over to pretty much the champion's ride. Luke Martin, pretty much this is his old race car, just renumbered to the 3. And the 3 team is pretty much the 8 car. So CM Racing should be pretty stout for this season, just like they were last year. Have no reason to think otherwise. Dejon Weeks, though, 211 in a turn 1. Could possibly be up there fighting for the pole. Gonna have to wait and see what his time is down the back straightaway. But Weeks, you know, he went winless last year. He's hoping to try and get back to victory lane this year, and I have all the confidence in the world to think that he will. He's one of the best drivers on the grid, and you put him in a champion's ride like Luke Martin took that team to a championship in Weeks. Look out for him in 2021. But Weeks just misses out on the front row, so he ends up being third fastest. And he's just behind Cody Llamas. Llamas keeps that front row start for right now. Weeks slots right in between Cody Llamas and Jeff James. We've had 6 cars take time trial that are locked in. 20 of them have taken time overall, so that just gives a good show of how many Go or Go Homers we've had to go through, and we're still having to go through a lot of them. There's still many of them to go. Samuel England graduated from the trucks all the way up to Cup. Didn't even really run has not run a full-time schedule in the Hardee's National Series. England, Napa Pro Series champion from 2019. 2020 had a good season over there in the Napa Truck Series. And here he is for Red Bull Racing. England does not look like he's got a pole run going, but he's got a lot to show for this year. He's got to prove that he deserves to be in the Sony Cup Series and prove his worth. He's replacing Richard Johnson, a 2-time champ. Johnson going to be driving for Cloud9 on a part-time basis. 42.826 for the 7 car. So that ends up putting England right in the middle of Scott Roush and Zaedin Davidson. But that 7 car of Samuel England in the Red Bull colors, he is locked into the Daytona 500, so no worries for him. Rayne going to take her time on the racetrack. Rayne, during the offseason, this is formerly Johnny Gardner, making the transition over to being Allison. This is Allison Rayne. First time she'll be as Allison on the racetrack. Fitzwater Racing Team trying to make the Daytona 500. They failed to qualify last year. And Allison Rayne doesn't look like she's got the speed into turn 1 to at least be competitive enough to be with Doug Lockrow. And that's the time that she is really aiming for. Lockrow ran a 42.977. He is the 5th Go or Go Homer so far that has taken time. This team didn't even make it to pole day last year, failed preseason inspection, was not able to partake in pole day. And here they are, trying to get it in, 43.091, so that is just not quick enough. And Allison going to have to race her way in on Thursday in the Gatorade Duels because it's just not quick enough today. Curtis DePaler out on the racetrack now. This team and driver got their best finish last year at Road America, finishing 17th. DePaler and Great Lakes both want to make the Daytona 500. And the time to beat, 42.977. And I can already tell as at the start-finish line and heading into turn 1, just doesn't seem like it's there. At least not to get the same lap time as what Doug Lockrow did. This team will need to try and race their way in on Thursday. Now, Great Lakes Motorsports, they have been making gains. They struggled last year to qualify for a lot of races, but they're hoping this year it'll be different and that they're making races and finishing better and better. 43.190, an improvement from practice, but not an improvement enough. DePaler finds themselves right there just ahead of Jake Rodgers, so they can be proud of the lap time they put down. They're ahead of quite a handful of drivers that they need to beat on Thursday. Riggs Jr. now on the racetrack for Morris Motorsports. Another one of the Go or Go Homers. This car was relatively off the pace, and we're going to see how much they have improved, if any, and they look relatively still off the pace. Not up to 200 miles an hour at the start-finish line, and just barely was able to get to 202 until it dropped off to 201 entering turn 1. Randy Riggs Jr. has never made a Sony Cup Series start from as far as I can tell, so Riggs is gonna have his hands full. just like a handful of other drivers that are trying to make their first Sony Cup Series start. Some trying to make their first Daytona 500. There's actually a handful of veterans. So I say veterans, but drivers that have starts under their belt but have never made a Daytona 500 start. Riggs Jr. crossed the line, 44.614. And that's going to be a tough one when it comes down to Thursday for that 89 team to make the field. Sean Harple now on the racetrack. Harple, the 2016 Hardee's National Series champion. Back in a ride with United Emirates Racing. He drove for that team, which was the old Sums Racing team back in the day in 2016 and 2015. Harple looking to get his career back on track. He's had a couple of miserable seasons in the Sony Cup Series. He's a talented race car driver. He's going to be alongside a veteran again, James Sorfox, a two cars on that team. Sorfox is a Daytona 500 champion. He's won a lot of races. Harple has won a couple times in the Sony Cup Series, but like mentioned, really needs to showcase his ability this season. As it comes to the line, where is he going to end up? Harple is locked into the Daytona 500 with this 14 car, 42.777, which is going to be good enough to place him right behind where Scott Roush was, and ninth best. Zachary Fitzwater is now on the racetrack. And that Foster's Toyota Camry, a new look to that race car. It was all white for the most part last year. Now it's got a real good-looking blue. And Fitzwater, he is on a winless streak coming in this season. He hasn't won in a while. Looking to get back to victory lane. Has not been to victory lane since 2017. Fisher Motorsports got a win in 2019 with Jordan Fisher behind the wheel of the number 2, winning at Chicagoland. Neither team, Fisher Motorsports, got a victory last year. They're looking to change that this year. They looked very good in the Hardee's National Series. But to the line, Zachary Fitzwater, 42.865. A respectable run for Fitzwater puts him 11th of 26 cars. With a couple of GOGH homers, we have Luke Martin and Dom Capps, two drivers that we believe should be capable of challenging to be in the fastest 5. Luke Martin, the defending series champion, we know he will race in the Daytona 500 no matter what. 210 and turn 1. And so Martin should be up the charts. When his teammate Zaedin Davidson's also trying to make the field, Davidson has nothing to fall back on. All he has to do is just either get in on speed or race in for Davidson. But for Martin, he knows he's in the race, but he can qualify his way in or race his way in and not have to fall back on a past champion's provisional. He's got to at least run a 42.977 to be in the fastest 5, and he does that easily. A 42.776, just barely 1/1000th of a second ahead of Sean Harple, but he is slower than Scott Roush, and that is going to be very big by about only nearly 100th of a second off of Scott Roush, and that is oh so close, and every position of any GOGH homer is going to count. Dom Capps, Season 6 champion, is on the racetrack. Another GOGH homer. These GOGH homers are making it so exciting for me. This is always so much fun. Fastest 5. All the GOGH homers, even the top teams, not even sure if they'll make the race on speed today. But this is the best way you can ensure yourself you'll make the race. Anything can happen on Thursday. And Dom Capps, 210 into turn 1. He's going to be right up that alley in the 70s mark where Scott Roush and Luke Martin ran, I believe. Could be up there with Baker. Jeff James's teammate ran such a good lap. James ran up to 213 in a turn 3, so he's not running as quick as Jeff James. Remember, this is an impound session. Qualifying always is. We run practice, then qualifying, then we race. So no changes after qualifying. So what you run here, you'll run on Thursday in a 42.741, which is good enough to leap him ahead of Scott Roush, ahead of Roush, and ahead of Martin. Davidson will not be a part of the fastest 5. It is Jeff James, Baker, Capps, Roush, and Martin, the fastest 5 currently. And the Sony Shootout winner, Ryan Acosta, is on the racetrack. Acosta. Man, was he willing it in the Sony Shootout. Got it done. A lot of people had him picked as a favorite to win the Sony Shootout, and he got it done. And his teammate, Chris Dodd, currently on pole. Can Ryan Acosta take it away from him? Acosta, let's see what he can get into turn 1. 211, clearly into 1, but was not able to get to 212. Acosta still could be on a good run. We'll see how he does down the back straightaway. Now, you need to get up to 213, which he's able to do. So Acosta has a good run right now. Could be on the front row. The Dodges of the Allen Family Racing Team cars looking very quick for Speed Weeks. And Acosta comes down the front straightaway. What will he run? A 42.57.5, just enough to be clear of Cody Llamas. And Ryan Acosta is on the outside front row, currently provisional outside pole. Good run for Ryan Acosta, the 44.45 on the front row. Ryan Acosta laid down a heck of a lap to try and go for pole, and was just good enough to be on the outside front row. Now we're back to the Go or Go Homers. Nick Mace was out for most of the season, came back with an old race car. This is a brand new ride. The 20 car. Nick Mace handpicked this number as a throwback to the old Richard Johnson. 210 into turn 1. That's going to be very close. It's going to be very tight because that looks like it's going to be another lap that's going to be in the 70s. And we know Dom Capps, Scott Roush, Luke Martin, they all ran laps in the 70s. Mace trying to get up to speed as much as he can. There's nothing much you can really do but put the foot to the floor. And Mace trying to qualify his way in. Luke Martin's the first driver with the past champions provisional. Then it's Nick Mace, so you're never too sure. And with a 42.740, that is just good enough to be right ahead of Dom Capps to put him third of the Go or Go Homers by 1/1000th of a second. He's ahead of Dom Capps, and that could be the difference. Any position could be the difference. You don't know. There's just so many cars left to go. Luke Martin will not be in off of speed. He could race his way in, but Martin, we know he's guaranteed to be in. He's now in the red. And it's Jeff James, Baker, Mace, Capps, and Roush now the fastest 5. Butcher now on the racetrack. Butcher was so close to winning the Napa Truck Series championship last year. For Orange Auto trying to make the Daytona 500. And it's clear to me, Butcher not going to be in the fastest 5. But it is going to be about, for these drivers, getting the highest placement in qualifying to start as high as you can in the Gatorade duels. Because if you can start as high as possible, it gives you a better opportunity to stay in that lead draft. And we know how this package is. That this could be a good race on Thursday. Well, it's going to be nearly a whole full field from the Gatorade duels. We got nearly 80 cars, so it means nearly 40 are going to be in each duel. A 44.7. Wow, that's the slowest lap of them all. So Ryan Butcher, that is definitely not a lap I don't think that team was hoping they would run. Tender for pole, James Shelley. Shelley in the 71 had a really good year last year for Turn to Performance. Really came back and showcased the driver that he is. He hadn't won in so long, then won at Kansas, nearly won Martinsville. Top 5 finish in the final standings for the Sony Cup Series in 2020. Just flickered into 211 into turn 1, but That's not going to be a pole run, and I don't think it's going to be a run to get him on the outside front row either. But Shelley, we know this is a car capable of winning the Daytona 500 and capable of winning races this year. Shelley's hoping to return to victory lane again, mainly here in the Daytona 500. Was on the outskirts of even being a championship contender in the final race, with the drivers having problems at Rockingham in the last race. And James Shelley runs a 42.64.3. That's good enough to put him dead even with DJ Kurtis. And wow, you guys will see it on the sheet how that is determined, but I believe that is determined off of last year's owner points, and I'm not entirely sure what the 19's owner points is exactly, but I will double check and you guys will already see it. But Shelley and Kurtis ran the exact same time. Bishop for Hero Motorsports now on the racetrack. This team is getting heavy affiliated parts and equipment this year from Turner Performance like they always have, but this team really tailed off at the end of last year, and I'm just not sure what to make of this 98. But it already looks like it is up to speed to try and be competitive enough to shoot for a good lap, to try and get into the fastest 5. 210 into turn 1, RJ Bishop, sub for Jesse Turner in the season finale, made his debut. He's attempting to make his second Sony Cup Series start. RJ Bishop, him and Zach Rotter's teammates, this 98 will run on a part-time basis. He's not running the same speed as what I believe Baker and James were running. I think this is going to be a lap in the 80s, and I just don't think this lap's going to be good enough. He needs to at least run a 42.76. And to the line, Bishop. Nope, in the 80s, just like I predicted it would be, a 42.84. So it's just not good enough, and RJ Bishop will have to qualify his way in on Thursday. Fisher now taking his time to lap. We talked about him a little bit when Zachary Fitzwater was on the racetrack. Fisher is in the Great American Race, going to try and take the pole for the 25th Annual Sony Cup Series Daytona 500. Jordan Fisher looking to try and break out into his own. He's been getting better and better as a race car driver. Had a real good run in the season finale last year. But Jordan Fisher, down the back straightaway he goes. Not much really to talk about, is there? But there's still a lot more cars to go and a lot to talk about. Jordan Fisher to the line. Doesn't look like it's going to be a pole run, but we'll see. 42.913. And Fisher, that's going to be good enough to place him just ahead of Kyle Collins. And that places him 19th best. I do apologize for really not having much to say on the Jordan Fisher lap. Just completely blanked out. But Fisher Motorsports running at pretty much about the same pace with the two Fisher cars. Fitzwater and Fisher about the same pace. Now the 65 on the racetrack of Amanda Evans. This is the Evans and Gardner Motorsports team. It's a new team, so they're going to be attempting the Daytona 500. Not entirely sure what their plans are for the future, but this used to be the old Red Stallion Racing team, if I'm sure about that. I believe so. Might have my teams all mixed up. There's a lot of teams on the grid. It says on the list that it is still Red Stallion Racing, but I'm sure that team name has changed. Coming into Speed Weeks, Amanda Evans, which is normally known as Rob Evans, to everyone that has known this driver in the past. Evans, a 44.28.4 or 28.3. So that is going to be good enough to put her in the 31st position out of 35 cars. I want to say, I am rusty as hell. Holy cow, I am. It has been a fat minute. This offseason has been brutal. This offseason has been so, it feels like it's been forever, but it feels like the brand new 2021 season just came right around the corner, didn't it? I feel like I've kind of forgot how to commentate. Cause, man. Anyways, gonna try and get into this and be serious, because it's been a little hard to get right back into the swing of things. As I'm recording this, qualifying is only in a couple days, and I'm working like non-stop. So I'm up at like 7 in the morning commentating this, and I'm about to fall asleep. But hopefully my brother Jacob Hart in Cannon, so he'll wake me up. Let's see what kind of lap he runs. His teammate is the guy he needs to at least beat, 42.766. He does that very well. Jacob Hart, holy shit. Oh my god. Ties Cody Llamas. That is third best. Well, after owner points determines it, fourth best. Jacob Hart, what a lap. And I bet you CM Racing are kicking themselves right now because, man, Scott Roush is no longer in the fastest five. I almost was sure that Scott Roush would have been one of the fastest five, but he is not. Jacob Hart is, though. Jacob Hart, he is quick. Fourth best. That is impressive. Wow. What a lap by Jacob Hart. Jacob Hart, that lap should get him in the Daytona 500. He was going to be a shoe-in, at least, to get in through the past Champions Provisional, but that was at least going to go to Martin Mace at first. But anyways, Bobby Jones for Monster Energy Racing going for the pole, not hitting 211 in turn 1, automatically just makes it where you're not going to get pole. I'm going to need to go back and look to see what Chris Dodd even did if into turn 1. I don't even know if he did 212, but Dodd ran a really good lap, and it's going to be tough to beat Chris Dodd. There's a handful of drivers left that I think can, but we're just going to have to wait and see. Bobby Jones to the line. Runs a 42.78. So that'll be good enough to put him right behind Sean Harple. Spagnaco making his first full-time season in the Sony Cup Series for CM Racing. It has been a long wait for Spagnaco to make his move up to the Cup level, and here he is driving the number 8 car. Basically, this is what the ride was that John Art piloted for last season. See what he can run into turn 1. Can't get up to 211. And just know that's not going to be a pole run if you can't get to 211 into turn 1. Now, Spagnaco's teammates, all of them have ran. Jacob Hart's the quickest one with a 42.57. Then it's Dejon Weeks with a 42.59. And then Scott Roush is going to have to race his way in on Thursday with a 42.76. So all of those lap times are respectable. Spagnaco is locked into the Great American Race. He will race. And Spagnaco comes across the line, 42.796. So that is the slowest of all the CM Racing drivers, and that'll put him 17th. Contender for the fastest 5, Jack Perkins. Another well-rounded Hardy's National Series up-and-comer. Racing for Kurtis Racing. He'll run select races in this 41 ride in the Cup Series for this year. Perkins 204 at the line, but what will he be able to do into turn 1? That'll give us a good indicator of what lap he is on. 209. That's just probably going to be in the 80s. Another lap in the 80s. And that's just not really where... I just noticed, actually, that RJ Bishop has not been highlighted in red to indicate that he's a go or go homer. So that will be fixed momentarily. But Perkins, probably going to be about the same as RJ Bishop. And I'm shocked, but Kurtis Racing, this 41 car, is not going to get in on speed, and that's not even close. 42.996, and that's going to put him behind the Cloud9 of Doug Lockrow. Rodder's back in familiar colors, a familiar number, but a different team. Rodder's driving for Hero Motorsports, and for many, they would consider that as a downgrade, but Turn Performance has said that they are still going to provide as much as they can to Hero Motorsports. This is the sister team. 211 into turn 1, though, for Zach Rodgers. Anytime you can hit at least 211, that's going to be a good lap. Rodgers has stated the goal is still the same. Try and compete for race wins. 213 into turn 3, so this is going to be a good lap. Let's see exactly where he ends up. I don't have an updated sheet just yet, but we'll get you one. 42.69. 609 to be exact. So Rodgers lays down a fantastic lap, only a 10th off of Chris Dodd, the pole sitter. So that is a great lap for the Hero Motorsports team. Go or go homer, Vince Freeze. Now his teammates are all in the fastest 5 currently. All of which the ones, actually, I'm stupid. I'm stupid. Oh, I'm stupid. Oh, I'm stupid. Oh, I am so stupid. I'm so stupid. Oh my god. I just remember the Dom Caps ain't locked in. Oh my goodness. Oh my god, I'm so stupid. Oh, I'm so fucking stupid. Okay, I just realized Dom Caps is not a go or go homer. Oh my god. Yeah. It is that's crazy. Alright. So anyway, that changes the whole complexion of go or go home qualifying. Everyone watching, all of you know, if you're on the Discord, that Dom Caps ain't a go or go homer. So I was just being dumb the whole time. Vince Freeze, however, just ran a phenomenal lap. 42.651. Didn't even get to talk about him much, but he has a lot on the line for this year. Wanting to prove everybody that he is going to blossom into a great driver like he hopes to. He beats Cole Baker. He beat Cole Baker. And for just a split moment, Scott Roush was secretly in the top 5, but now he ain't. So basically, Vince Freeze just replaced Dom Caps as one of the drivers in the top 5. Caps wasn't a go or go homer the whole time. I was just completely brain farting. And Vince Freeze beats Cole Baker. He beat Cole Baker by 2/1000ths of a second. And that, ladies and gentlemen, could be the difference. Just like I was saying with Nick Mace over Dom Caps, but even though Dom Caps ain't a go or homer, but, whatever. So, now, it is Jacob Hart, Jeff James, Vince Freeze, Cole Baker, and Nick Mace, the top 5. Wow. Okay. Well, that is a little embarrassing. Like I mentioned, it has been very tough to get back into the swing of things. But pole day qualifying, it has been eventful, really. Mason Gordon on the racetrack. Mason Gordon. He is an old-time veteran. Has not been on the racetrack in a Sony Cup Series race since 2016 at Willow Springs. He has not been on the racetrack in an FBRL event since the 2017 Hardy's finale. So it has been upwards to 4 years since Mason Gordon's been in an FBRL race. And this is Anthony Marchese's ride. This ride is locked into the first 5 races, so Gordon will not have to worry about whether he gets in on speed or not. And it's a 43.200. So Gordon, that's good enough to put him just ahead of Jake Rodgers and puts him 31st. Buckle your belts up. We're going to go for a ride. Bradley Bishop Jr. This is an Allen family racing team car, and guess what? The other 2 cars that have run with this same car and engine are on the front row. So what can Bishop Jr. run? A Hardy's National Series veteran. Don't forget he's ran some Sony Cup Series races in the past. 211 clearly into turn 1. I don't know if this is going to be a pole run. Dodd was just on it. Chris Dodd was just on it. Up by 0.07 of a second on his teammate Acosta. But Bishop Jr. 213 into turn 3. Bradley Bishop Jr. should qualify in easily off of turn 4. Bradley Bishop Jr. trying to make his first Daytona 500 in many years. 42.58.4, and that's going to be good enough to put him 5th best. So Bishop Jr., it's not good enough to beat the fastest GOGH homer. Jacob Hart is still the fastest GOGH homer. But it is Hart, Bishop Jr., Jeff James, Vince Freeze, and Cole Baker. Nick Mace has been bumped from the fastest 5. Now that it's confirmed, Nick Mace and Luke Martin are past champions, the most recent ones, that will not get in on speed today. Jacob Hart still has a really good chance. It's not confirmed yet, but Jacob Hart's got a good chance. Richard Johnson really needs to try and get a lap in to be the fastest 5. His teammate, though, Doug Lockrow's down in 27th, and Baker's up in 13th. And Richard Johnson hit 209, so Johnson needs, if you're a GOGH homer, you really need to be hitting at least 210 to be in a shout of the fastest 5, but 211 really would put you in good standards. That's where Jacob Hart and Bradley Bishop Jr. and Jeff James were all running. But Richard Johnson in the Cloud 9 colors is going to have to really try hard to race his way in because he is far down the past champions list. And Ian Dutta is 34th with a 43.24, which is a ways down. Actually, it's not that slow. It's not as slow as I predicted, but Ian Dutta, I believe, if he needed to, I think Ian Dutta is going to get that past champions provisional. But with a 42.936, that's a respectable run by Richard Johnson and Cloud9 Racing. Silver Fox now on the racetrack. Silver Fox, let's see. He'll be a contender to try and go for the pole, but this is a driver this team I really do not expect to snatch the pole, even though they should be quick and contenders to try and win on Sunday for the Daytona 500. Silver Fox won the race before, 2017 winner. And he's got himself in a good position this year. You know, he was driving Monster Energy Racing last year. That was kind of a building project. Possibly could have been a lot better this year if he was still with the team, but moved over to United Emirates Racing. This team was poised for a top 15 finish in the final standings. I believe they actually might have achieved that. If not, they were 16th. Jeff James really built that team up. 42.669. That is a really good run. And Silver Fox places himself relatively high, and this team could be an upset for the Daytona 500. You better look out for Silver Fox. This team has won before with TJ Martin at Talladega. Bassinger, last year's runner-up for the championship on the racetrack. Jake Bassinger, he had a really, really good year last year. He won 5 times. had more top fives, or actually, I believe so, more top fives, just not as many top tens as Luke Martin. And the defeat was something for Jake Bassinger. It just slipped through his grasp last year. Looking back on it now, especially with this being like the same paint scheme that he did last year, Jake Bassinger's got something to prove for 2021. Trying to come in here, win the Daytona 500 for the first time in his career, and try and nab that second championship. As the bang forward comes off of turn 4. Into the line, 42.63.4. That is a good lap for Jake Bassinger. So that's going to be good enough to place him in 9th position, just ahead of James Shelley. Back to 5 GOGH homers, which will be Andrew Rich, Daniel Bouchard, Larry Hagan, Nick Perkins, and William Brock. So those are the next 5 GOGH homers. Then it's Dylan Young, and then we're back to 3 GOGH homers again. This is the team velocity dodge of Andrew Rich. This team just got 200 mile an hour at the line and 204 in turn 1, so this is not going to be a pole run, and it's not going to be a run to getting into the fastest 5. But for Rich and team velocity, it's all about racing in the duels, and that's what a lot of teams have came down here for. You know you're racing in the duels on Thursday. Qualifying, it's all about positioning yourself as high as possible for them duels, because the higher up you start, the better off you will be, because you'll have some pushers behind you and a better position in the pack. 44.135, and that's going to be good enough to put him just ahead of Stratus DePaler in 34th position. Apologies for that. Andrew Rich, that was actually a whole second slower than I thought it was. I thought it was a 42, but it was not, or 43, but that was actually a 44. So Rich ran 42nd out of 47 cars. Daniel Bouchard at the line, 204 at the line. His teammates ran, where are they at? Let's see. Excuse my alarm. Doug Lockrow ran a 42.97, and Richard Johnson, which I don't have highlighted in red, is a 42.936. So, doesn't look like Bouchard's going to be getting in on speed, but should be in an area around there, in the 90s or the low 43s. Bouchard, this is another season at Cloud 9. This team getting a lot of support from Red Bull Racing now. 42.958. And Bouchard, that's a respectable run. Daniel Bouchard, Doug Locker, Richard Johnson, all of them are hoping to race their way in on Thursday to get into the Great American Race. Hagan out on the racetrack for Breeding Enterprises. Breeding Enterprises fielding 4 cars. They fielded 4 cars for the most part at the end of last year. A mixture of Maalik Motorsports and Breeding Enterprises. This team will field 4 cars, and then will be about 2 for the most part for the rest of the season, unless Breeding does breeding things and fields 4 cars. But Larry Hagan trying to qualify in for the Daytona 500. It would be his first attempt. Now, for Hagan, just like many, I don't see him beating Cole Baker with a 42.653. But he has Thursday to rely on, and you get paid to race on Thursday, figuratively. So Larry Hagan, a lot of these teams come down here knowing that they will at least race in that race, and it's worth coming down to Daytona and being a part of it. But Larry Hagan puts up a respectable run. You know, it's right there. You know, that team might be up to speed enough where they have a good chance to be in that lead draft. It's a 43.611, and that's good enough to put him behind Patrick Smith. Larry Hagan's teammate Nick Perkins on the racetrack. Perkins is a 3-time winner in the series. I think a lot of people Might end up forgetting about that. Perkins, he hasn't won since 2015, though. On a long winless streak, he's back full-time in the series. Breeding Enterprises, I'm going to have to look and see what this one car can run, but I was very impressed with that 12-car speed. And that's the first breeding car of the day. So this is the second one, back-to-back Breeding Enterprises cars. It's a nice-looking one car. This team, well, the old 89 car, which I'm not entirely sure. I think that's the... I'm not entirely sure if this is what was the 89 car or if that's the 15. But Nick Perkins, that team failed to qualify for like 19 races at the end of last year. Wow. Wow. 43-130. Nick Perkins. That is a great lap. That is a great lap for Nick Perkins and team. That puts him just ahead of Stratus DePaler and Great Lakes Motorsports. But man, that team looks like it's come here to race, and it's going to try and make the Daytona 500. It's going to have a lot of competition on Thursday, but that car should be capable of running in the draft and mixing it up with everyone. Benyako Racing's own William Brock. This is going to be a debut for a lot of teams, but for this team too, it'll be their first attempt of a Sony Cup Series race. And William Brock coming to the line, we'll see what he will be able to build up. And looks like William Brock, this team, I mean, it's going to be very tough to be part of the fastest five. I mean, I think a lot of people came in this thinking that, you know, it's going to be almost impossible to be a part of the fastest five of the GOGH homers. But running a lap that is as good as you can to be as high up in the pack, that's what you want to try and do. And that's what all these teams are doing. That's what William Brock's out there doing right now. And it's not over. I mean, we've seen Cinderella stories happen. And first ever start for this team, first ever attempt for this team could go well. We never know. 43-387. So that puts him just behind Shade Eaves and puts him in the middle of things. And that lap is respectable enough, and we could be seeing William Brock try and race his way in on Thursday. Young on the racetrack will make up the last Turner Performance Drive. Whoa, not quite. Not quite. Jesse Turner's coming up. Forgot that he has not turned a lap. You know, we have Jake Bassinger and James Shelley out there. Both of them ran pretty close together. They're 9th and 10th currently. So we'll see what Dylan Young can run. Remember, 211's really what you want to be hitting into turn one, and Dylan Young didn't even hit that. Chris Dodd really put down a lap. Put down something that nobody can really catch. He is 0.07 of a second, which is a lot on a super speedway. On Ryan Acosta, his teammate. Cody Llamas there too. Jacob Hart, Bradley Bishop Jr. Hart and Bishop Jr., both of them GOGH homers, but they're in the top 5 right now of about 50 cars that have made a lap. And Dylan Young crossed the line, 42.70. So Dylan Young, that puts him just behind James Sorfox in the 16th position. Early Smith out on the racetrack. Smith trying to make the Daytona 500 with Joseph Shrigley Racing. This is the first JSR car to hit the racetrack today. Joseph Shrigley Racing has only made one super speedway race ever, and it came with Dom Capps in 2019. And Smith wasn't quite able to hit the mark that I was thinking he could. But nonetheless, it looks like it's going to be around about where Jake Rodgers, Ian Dutta, William Brock, and all of them are in. He's putting up decent speeds, so Smith should be fast enough, just looking at it here, you know, they're not too far off. A lot of these drivers are not too far off the pole speed. You know, if you can be about a second, if you can be just about a second and a half, they say 2 seconds, but if you're about a second, you really can mix it up in there. And if you're about 2 seconds behind the pole speed, within that at least, you could be in the draft. And Charlie Smith, within there, 28, that's going to put him in between Dutta and Shade Eaves. A lot of these guys are going to have a tall task. You know, they're not as quick as some of these other drivers, but, you know, they could do something. A lot of these drivers and teams have came with potential pace to upset on Thursday. Morris Motorsports entry, the Racing with Jesus Toyotas. This will be the second car. Randy Riggs Jr. has already been out. He is 52nd of 53 cars. He ran a 44.61.4, and that's about 2.1 seconds off the pole speed currently. And like I said, I think really a time that could really tell is about maybe if you're about a second and a half off the pole speed. That's about where I would say maybe draw the line of cars that can hang on to the late draft and can't. So there's a few cars that really need some more, like some drivers from A.J. Jones on down, I think are going to have a tough time qualifying in. So it looks like A.J. Jones, Jordan Presto, Andrew Rich, Amanda Evans, Dewey Schramm, Maalik Nevins, Randy Riggs Jr., Ryan Butcher, all of them have a lot of work to do. And Carter Friesen just turned in the slowest lap of the day, and a 44.769. You know, that's just going to be very tough. You know, they're going to need a lot of luck and need some of the very quick cars to have problems on Thursday. The Season 4 champion is on the racetrack. Now, Hayden Klein, even though he's a champion, and we have the past champions provisional, I do not see the past champions provisional getting sent all the way down to him. You have Luke Martin, Nick Mace, Jacob Hart, Ian Dutta, Richard Johnson that all have it going their way before Hayden Klein. So Hayden Klein's got to race in or qualify in. I do not see Hayden Klein being able to fall back on that past champions provisional. He is it's the most previous past champion that's going to get it, and he's all the way at the bottom of the list of guys eligible to get that. So Klein, I mean, it's possible he can just race in. He's got a quick car. We know Roush Family Racing's quick. We know that Hayden Klein knows how to get it done on the super speedways. So he could get it done for sure. He turns in a lap 43.139, and that's going to put him just behind Nick Pericles. Earl Sanford's Red Bull on the racetrack. Sanford is now the most winning driver on the circuit that doesn't have a championship. So Sanford with 19 wins, going to be aiming for 20 this year. Got a win at Talladega last year. Talladega was pretty crazy. But that package is not the same as what it is now. It's a pack. You're racing in a pack. You've pretty much seen it in the Sony shootout. That's going to be double in the duels and in the Daytona 500. Sanford's running a relatively good pace. We know Samuel England's already been out, and the Cloud 9s have been out. They all ran about in the same speed. You know, England ran in the 80s, the Cloud 9s ran in the 90s, and Sanford runs in the 80s, just behind his teammate of Samuel England. England has just a tiny bit of speed more than Sanford. But, yeah, the Red Bulls running 4280s, and the Cloud 9 is running 4290s. There is not that many cars left that I think could go for the pole. I mean, Jesse Turner's going to be quick. We have Turner, Jeffrey White, John Arndt, Ryan Griffin, Jeffrey Lynn, Dylan Schwellenberg, Eric Burton. Those are really the last few cars that are locked in and I believe could go for pole. I don't think any of the GOGH homers could, but Turner just nipped 211, but, you know, that's just not going to be a pole run. You got to be clearly 211 by a good ways into turn one, and he just wasn't. Unless for some reason he's just gets a good run down the back straightaway, and he's way in there, but he's not quite 213 for the longer than what Dodd and all them were. Turner's going to run a good lap. Going to be about where his teammates are of Bassinger and Shelley. I think he's going to be in the 60s. And a 63.6. So that puts him just right behind Jake Bassinger. Alexander Rowe back for a second season. Rowe won the Rookie of the Year last year for Flying Aces Racing. This team looking to try and step it up a notch. You know, this team was further back near running top 30 most of the time, but they're trying to improve for this year. 210 entering turn one, so that's a respectable speed. He's going to be in the 42 bracket. At least he should be. But Alexander Rowe, you know, he was locked in last year, and he was virtue of owner points that they bought during the offseason for the first 5 races. And after the first 5 races, they stayed in the top 30 all season. You know, they weren't never the flashiest team, and they struggled a little bit, but they stayed in top 30, and they buckled down and made sure they stayed top 30 in a 42.804. That's a good run. That's the same lap that RJ Bishop put down earlier today, but that's going to be the nod to the 05 of Alexander Rowe due to owner points, and that puts him 25th best. All right, so we're back to the GOGH homers. And let me just say, we only have 6 more drivers left that aren't locked in. And those are Jeffrey White, John Arndt, Ryan Griffin, Jeffrey Lynn, Dylan Schwellenberg, Eric Burton. And Gatlin Downey. Oh, I'm so stupid. Downey's already ran a lap. And it was 43.08. This into perspective, we're back to the GOGH homers. And we only have 6 more drivers left that aren't locked in. And those are Jeffrey White, John Arndt, Ryan Griffin, Jeffrey Lynn, Dylan Schwellenberg, Eric Burton. So we have, you know, those 6, and then we have everyone else just trying to get themselves into the Daytona 500, either on speed or racing in on Thursday. A lot of GOGH homers. 79 cars here. It's just a record-breaking entry list, folks. We're getting close. You know, 62 was the record for most drivers trying to qualify into the Daytona 500 or any race in particular in the FBRL. 79's unheard of. Gatlin Downey's on the clock. I'm going to see what Downey can run. And Downey, 43.082. Good lap. That's a good lap for Downey and good lap for Anja Auto. You see, Jake Rodgers ran a 43.237. And, you know, we also know that Ryan Butcher, had a terrible lap. I don't know what happened to him. And Jordan Presto didn't run too well. But Downey in the 07, that's the best lap of that team. And they're up there, and that's a good lap. That's a respectable run. Here's a heavy hitter for the GOGH homers. There's only a couple more GOGH homers I think have a realistic chance of knocking down some of these fastest 5. Jacob Hart, Bradley Bishop Jr., Jeff James, Vince Freeze, Cole Baker. Those are your fastest 5. Brandon Parsons driving a car, qualifying a car right now, that 2 drivers are in the fastest 5. Parsons, 210 in a turn 1. He came into the series mid-season last year, and a lot of people gave him flack. The virtual iRacer. Brandon Parsons comes in with really no experience in the FBRL. Came in, did what he did last year. Had a few good runs and a few runs he had to learn from. The 00 this year. Can Parsons knock Baker out of the fastest 5? He needs to run at least a 42.653. No, he doesn't do it. 42.735. Parsons will have to look for the duels on Thursday if he wants to race in the Daytona 500 for the first time. Parsons does not do it. Right now on the racetrack, his teammate Cody Llamas ran a super lap earlier, 3rd quickest. Jack Perkins, however, earlier didn't run the best time. And it was quite disappointing. But to the line, Jeffrey White, we're going to see what he runs. White is locked into the field. This was the old DJ Kurtis car. Was the 8 car. So we expect this car to be very competitive for this timed lap and for this entire season. DJ Kurtis won races in this car last year. Jeffrey White, coming off some good runs in the Hardee's National Series, has a full-time gig in the Sony Cup Series this season. Him and Cody Llamas aligned together for the 2021 season. Many people have this duo picked as drivers that are going to win races and be competitive for this year. 42.725 for Jeffrey White, which is good enough to put him in the 18th place. Not many locked-in cars left. A lot of GOGH homers still to come. However, there's not many drivers I think are very capable of making the fastest 5. Tim Fiegel to the line. 202. His teammates have ran all across the board. As we're looking at the timesheet, Nick Perkins is 42nd right now, and his teammates 52nd. I think that's it. Just only his 2 teammates have ran, Larry Hagan and Nick Perkins. Fiegel is a Breeding Enterprises car. So we're going to see where this 13 car ends up. 4 cars for Breeding Enterprises attempting. Hagan, Perkins have already ran laps. Fiegel's on the track, and Stephen Pollard III. Pollard III making his one last hurrah, trying to make the Daytona 500, and that's going to be very tough to do to try and make this race. 43.414, and Breeding Enterprises, you really got to give them a round of applause because they're putting up good qualifying efforts and they have good enough speed, and I think that's going to be capable. I think they're fast enough to at least be able to run in the draft and be competitive on Thursday, so good on them, and we're going to find out how them cars are going to run. There's a driver that could really be a contender for the fastest 5. There's not a whole lot of drivers, like I mentioned, that I think can get the fastest 5. I think Hannah Allen's got a good chance. Looking at some of the GOGH homers to go later. Julio Caesar, maybe Joseph Shrigley. But Hannah Allen to the line for a Rodriguez racing car. See what Hannah Allen can muster. 210 into turn 1. That's going to be borderline. I think Allen needed to be a little quicker, but that's going to be up there regardless. That might be around the same time that Brandon Parsons ran, and we know that was just not good enough for Parsons. And Hannah Allen through 3 and 4 is going to need to run a 42.653 to be in the race, locked in, at least in the fastest 5 currently. Not good enough. 42.711, and that is just good enough to be just outside, to be 6th fastest of the GOGH homers. And I'm telling you, I think the fastest 5 has been determined. I think it's going to be very hard to knock down Jacob Hart, Bradley Bishop Jr., Jeff James, Vince Freeze, and Cole Baker. I think those are the drivers that are going to make the Daytona 500 on speed. But you never do know. There's some other contenders to follow, like Julio Caesar, maybe Joseph Shrigley. There's some other contenders as well, but we're going to have to wait and see. Allison now on the racetrack. last year, this 03 team was able to make it on speed. But looking at the speed the 23 ran that Patrick Smith went out and did, wouldn't be surprised if S3 Motorsports is preparing more for a race run than trying to qualify in, because that fastest 5 is very tough to get into, and speed does not really matter as much as it did last year. I mean, obviously it still does. Fastest 5, you get locked in, but last year at least, if you were 6th or 7th or 8th fastest, you could still get in the race if, say, the fastest 5 race their way in. It's not the case this year. 2019 rules for this year. Fastest 5 get locked in, they do not carry over into the duels. Whoever is not locked in after today will have to race their way in on Sunday. And that's a good lap for the 03 of James Ellison. Let's see. Yeah, that's like 3-4 tenths faster than what his teammate did. Ellison ran at 43.177, and that's good enough to put him right behind Hayden Klein. It's Brandon Crasta's turn. This is a Flying Aces Racing entry, a second car. So Alexander Rowe ran a pretty good run. So if Brandon Crasta can mimic something like that, that would be very good. But this is the second car, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's more geared up for a race trim to try and race their way in on Thursday. Crasta hit 209 in a turn 1, so we know that he is not going to be a part of the fastest 5. You needed to run upwards into 211 in a turn 1. But Crasta, through 3 and 4, going to see where he ends up. As high as possible would really help him as far as trying to get a good placement and stay in that lead draft. But to the line, 43.063, and that will place him just behind Daniel Day and ahead of Gatlin Downey. Here now on the racetrack, another S3 Motorsports entry. Now we know what kind of run Ellison did, and Patrick Smith as well. So Kev Shear in the 69 Chevy. I think this is going to be the first time the 69 car has been on the racetrack in the Sony Cup Series race. Or maybe not even in the race, but at least on the racetrack. Kev Shear is going to try and make the race in this 69 car. So Kev Shear is going to be driving for CM Racing in the Hardee's National Series. Getting a pretty good opportunity over there. And it's got a good chance for S3 Motorsports to try and make the Daytona 500. We know this car should have the speed to be in the lead draft, and could be an outside contender to be one of the top 3 on Thursday as he comes to the line. 43.335, and that's going to put him all the way back in between Shade Eaves and William Brock. And Arndt is going to give it a go to try and topple one of his teammates. You have Chris Dodd and Ryan Acosta that's on top of the leaderboard. 1-2. And then Bradley Bishop Jr.'s 5th. Arndt crosses the line. An Allen family racing team, all front row. Can he get to 211? He's pretty much up to 211 now. And he was... I don't think he was quite 211 clearly in a turn 1, but he was 211 for sure. Arndt down the back straight away. Looking to get Ryan Acosta off the front row. Looking to get Chris Dodd off the pole. Allen Family Racing Team. They're so quick. They're the quickest Chevys. They're 1st, 2nd, 5th. And then all the way back to 24th is the next Dodge. Whereas Arndt, not good enough. 42.615 just was not quick enough. And John Arndt is going to be the slowest of the Allen Family Racing Team bunch. And that's going to place him 9th best. First time a Young Wicked Racing entry has entered Daytona without having a past champions provisional to fall back on. Nick Breeding is driving the 08 Young Wicked Racing entry. So this team, it fell outside the top 30 in owner points last year in the last couple of races. And now Breeding is on a mission to try and qualify this car in. Now we know this team has been doing well, actually. Like, this team usually gets some good runs in. And this is going to be Nick Breeding's first full-time campaign in the Sony Cup Series. Breeding ran pretty solid in the races he did run last year. Ran with Hero Motorsports some. We know he drove for a handful of teams last year. But Breeding to the line. Where is he going to end up? 43.062. And that's a respectable run for Nick Breeding. So that's going to put him just ahead of Brandon Crasta. Lane Sanders on the racetrack now for Roush Family Racing. Sanders, this is a second car. Sean Perkins actually qualified this car into the race, like on speed last year. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case this year. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a roundabout close to where Hayden Klein ran. And Hayden Klein's 47th currently with a 43.139. Sanders is going to be fighting an uphill battle like everyone else, trying to make the Daytona 500 and the Domino's Ford. It would be his first ever Daytona 500 if he can get into the Great American Race. As he comes off of turn 4, he'll be running a handful of Sony Cup Series races this year. He attempted a handful of them last year. 43.157. So that is just barely behind Hayden Klein. So I was right on the money with that. So he's dead behind Hayden Klein. Here's Caesar, one of the last few GOGH homers. Let's see. I think we're going to start locking in people. So Julio Caesar, as he comes to the line, this will either lock Caesar into the race if he can be the fastest, which doesn't look like it's going to be the case, which it'll lock in Jacob Hart if he doesn't beat Jacob Hart. But he's got to at least beat Cole Baker to be in the fastest 5, to be within a shout of making this race. There's only 5 GOGH homers left. Julio Caesar, Joseph Shrigley, Edward Ziemba, Stephen Pollard III, and Matt DeLeo. Those are the 5. They're going up against the 5 that are already ran. Jacob Hart watching this lap, figuratively seeing if he can make the race. It's not going to happen for Julio Caesar, though. Caesar is not a part of the fastest 5. Which means Jacob Hart will be in the Daytona 500, will not need a past champions provisional, nothing. He's in on speed, and the 81 car will race on Sunday. And there's 4 more GOGH homers and 4 more spots to determine. Caesar, though, is not one of those 5. The last big contenders for the fastest 5 is Joseph Shrigley. However, his teammates were almost on top of each other in terms of speed. They ran 42.8s and 42.9s. And Shrigley's going to have to get down to the 42.6s. And to the line, I don't think it's going to happen. I really think the fastest 5 for pole day qualifying is going to be Jacob Hart, Bradley Bishop Jr., Jeff James, Vince Freeze, and Cole Baker. I think those are going to be your fastest 5. Hannah Allen, Brandon Parsons, Nick Mace, Scott Roush, Luke Martin, all missing it just by the slimmest of margins. But Shrigley in the 02, trying to make his first ever start in the Great American Race. Try and get as good a lap as he can to the line. Shrigley with a 43.071. That's slower than his teammates. And that's a ways down the order some. So he's going to have to race hard on Thursday to try and get that 02 into the race. Ziemba in the second Hydra racing car on the racetrack trying to make the Daytona 500. Hydra trying to make the Daytona 500, and Edward Ziemba trying to make the Daytona 500 for the first time. So that lap previously locked in Bradley Bishop Jr. Now, Edward Ziemba will need to beat Jeff James to keep Jeff James from being locked in, or he'll need to at least beat Cole Baker. Baker is the benchmark right now. And Ziemba looking like he'll possibly be in the same ballpark as his teammate. And his teammate Ian Dutta, looking for him on the top. There he is. He's down in 55th, which seems like it's a far ways down, but he ran a 43.2. And when you think about it, 43.2, that's not too far off in terms of time. And Edward Ziemba ran quicker. 43.176. So that puts him just ahead of James Ellison to put him in 51st. But, you know, they're a ways down the order, but they are not as slow as it may seem. They're not that far off. They have an outside chance of racing in on Thursday, and them dual qualifiers are going to be so exciting. Griffin on the racetrack. He is one of the last couple that are going to be going for pole, but Monster Energy Racing has not looked as quick for the pole. But Griffin was the only exception. He was the fastest Monster Energy Racing car in practice. And here he is giving it a go. 209, so that's not going to be a pole run, but we know Ryan Griffin is in the race. Momentarily, we saw him lead in the Sony shootout, but then went right back to mid-pack and was not really a challenger in the Sony shootout. So Monster Energy Racing has some work to do as far as getting that car tuned up for the duels, and then figuring out what they need from the duels to the Daytona 500, and trying to win the Great American Race. As Griffin comes across the line, 42.952, so at least he's in the 42-second bracket, and Griffin all the way down in the 38th position, just ahead of Daniel Bouchard. Two GOGH homers are left, and it's Stephen Paul III and Matt DeLeo. Breeding Enterprises and Joseph Strigley Racing. So those cars are going to have a tough time to beat Vince Freeze and Cole Baker. Stephen Paul III across the line. For Breeding Enterprises, they're trying to make the Daytona 500. Breeding Enterprises came very close to making this race in 2019. Going to give it another go to try and race their way in on Thursday. It's not going to happen today, though, as there's so much competition for the fastest five that the fastest five are right up there close to into the top 10 in terms of speed, and there's drivers that are just outside the top 10 that aren't in the race on speed currently. 43.306 for Stephen Paul III, which is going to place him just in front of Shade Eaves and behind Charlie Smith. So Stephen Paul III is going to need to have another Cinderella story on Thursday if he wants to make the Daytona 500 once again. Jeffrey Lynn out on the racetrack, and looking at his teammates' times, they're currently 48th and 37th. So Jeffrey Lynn looks like Horizon Group in general is just not got the speed for pole day. But when it comes to race day, that might be different. Jeffrey Lynn, the 2015 pole sitter for this race, on the racetrack trying to get his timed lap in. A very unique scheme compared to the rest of the field. You know, the rims are painted purple, violet. You know, no one else really has anything like that. It's a neat looking ride. That ride's been around for a while. Horizon Group's always had some good paint schemes, but it's on the track that matters most, and it's Not as quick as Chris Dodd ran earlier in the day, but this is a good run for Jeffrey Lynn to be in the 42-second bracket, 42.895, and that's going to put him, wow, there's so many people that have ran in the 42-second bracket. Jesus. Jeffrey Lynn is down in 35th, and Jeffrey Lynn is 4/10 off the pole speed. So I guess that is a big difference. I don't know, but that Jeffrey Lynn, 4/10 off the pole speed, is down in 35th. Last qualifier for the Go or Go Homers. It is Matt DeLeo. We'll have DeLeo and then 3 drivers, Eric DeMax, Dylan Schwellenberg, and Eric Burton. Believe there could be a challenger somewhere in there for the pole against Chris Dodd. But Matt DeLeo, it's either DeLeo or Cole Baker that's going to get this final spot for the final 5, or the fastest 5. I'll let you be the judge of who you think's going to get that spot. Either Matt DeLeo or in the Joseph Strigley racing car, or Cole Baker in the Cybertron Motorsports car. All jokes aside, Matt DeLeo in the 0-1 back in a ride. He took the whole season off, basically, of 2020. His teammate ran down a time, 43.284, and he's about right on top of his teammate's time. So Matt DeLeo ran a 43.291, or 292. See where that places him. That places him right behind Charlie Smith. So they are right on top of each other. By the way, the fastest 5 is confirmed. Jacob Hart, Bradley Bishop Jr., Jeff James, Vince Freeze, and Cole Baker. Those are the 5 that will be locked into the Daytona 500 off of their speed today. Everyone else of the Gorga Homers will have to race their way in on Thursday. Eric DeMax is locked in from owner points that Mace Enterprises has purchased for that 4 car during the off-season. So DeMax does not have to worry about time trialing his way in or racing in. Nick Mace is the only one that team's worried about. And even so, if Luke Martin can race his way in, Nick Mace can get Bash Champions Professional, and Mace could race his way in. We saw him pretty quick in the Sony shootout. But Eric DeMax, the defending Daytona 500 champion, coming to the line. We're going to see what kind of lap he will run. 42.852. And that's going to put him just in between Charles Sanford and Zachary Fitzwater. So Eric DeMax will take that timed lap and get prepared for the Thursday dual qualifiers. Schwellenberg, only 2 cars left. Schwellenberg on the racetrack. I think he was pretty disappointed, maybe, in how the shootout went. Wasn't really much of a factor for the driver that was the defending winner of this race. Well, last time we had been here for the July race, won that convincingly, and then was second in the Daytona 500. So Schwellenberg has a lot he's looking forward to try and snatch back the Daytona 500. He came so close to winning the Daytona 500 last year, but came up short to Eric DeMax. Schwellenberg knows how to get around Daytona. Hell, he only lives a couple miles away from it. It's home track. Schwellenberg's not on a pole run. He's not hitting the marks that he really needs to be hitting. But we know that Camry's quick, and we know how this team usually has been in the past for the Daytona 500. They're usually a contender. Dom Capps has won with this team before. Jeff James has won with this team before. Eric DeMax last year, yeah. So all 3 times they've won the Daytona 500. Jeff James, Dom Capps, Eric DeMax. Yeah, it was different team names, but relatively it's the same organization that's been going to victory lane in the Daytona 500. Can Rodriguez Racing continue that feat? Dylan Schwellenberg, 42.70. So that's going to place him at the same time as Dylan Young. So that places him down mid-pack. And the final qualifier of the day is the driver that happened to be the fastest in single-car runs last time for practice. Eric Burton. Cybertron Motorsports. Now, let's see. DJ Kurtis is 13th. Cole Baker is 16th. Burton will need to pack in about a tenth and a half, really, compared to his teammates. He's 206 at the line. This could be a potential pole run. 211 clearly into turn 1. Burton's going to keep Allen Family Racing Team honest. The final qualifier of the day had a heck of a get up to speed to the line. He is looking super good. 213 clearly. Clearly into turn 3. The last qualifier of the day. Burton could snatch it away from Chris Dodd. Off of turn 4 to the line. Eric Burton. Can he do it? He needs a 42.50. He does it! Eric Burton is on pole for the 25th Annual Daytona 500, taking it away from Chris Dodd. Eric Burton on pole for the Daytona 500, the last car to go out for qualifying. And Eric Burton 42.491 compared to Chris Dodd's 42.507. Allen Family Racing Team had an all front row with Dodd and Acosta. Now, Burton and Dodd are on the front row. And man, you got to be gutted for Dodd. Dodd was on the pole for nearly the entire qualifying session. He laid down such a good run, but Burton put it on him. Eric Burton snatches pole position in the Daytona 500. And as long as him and Dodd can finish the duels on Thursday, they will start first and second. Everyone else, their starting positions will be determined on finishing results in the duels. And those that are go or go homers will have to race their way in. Top 3 of the drivers not already locked in, which Jacob Hart, Bradley Bishop Jr., Jeff James, Vince Freeze, and Cole Baker. Those are the 5 today that locked themselves in on speed. And they join the 30 other drivers that are locked in. So they will not impact the race at all on Thursday by racing in it. Those 5 go-go homers will no longer be counted for as the 3 cars that are racing in. Top 3 of the go-go homers that aren't locked in on Thursday will race in. So that is going to be one to watch. You'll want to tune in to see how those go-go homers race to try and make the race for the Daytona 500. And then who's going to win the duels on Thursday? That usually sets the tone for how the Daytona 500 is going to be presented. And we know that Burton and Dodd, as far as if they can finish the race on Thursday, they will be the front row starters for the Great American Race for the 25th Annual Sony Cup Series Daytona 500. Thank you all for watching, and now it's time to see the starting lineup for Gatorade Duel number 1 and Gatorade Duel number 2.